Hey, I'm Madhura Dias. I've been in software development for the past 2 decades. Today, I'm going to show you some techniques to optimize EFCO queries. This video is mainly targeted towards those with at least basic understanding of Entity Framework. If you're already familiar with Entity Framework, you can use one of these three patterns to load related data. In this session, I'm not going to getting into the details of each and every method. Instead, I'll show you how you can optimize queries when you use eager loading. In eager loading, we load data from the database in our initial query. I will use a simple bookstore application to show you the techniques throughout the video. Here we have simple entity diagram for the bookstore. We have book can have one or more SKUs, it can have one or more reviews, and it can be belongs to one or more categories. Category could be science fiction, history fiction, romance, so on. This is a sample record of a book. We have book ID, title, author, two SKUs. It means you can buy this book in the format of hardcover or paperback, and it has two categories and two reviews as well. This is application DB context. These are the entity configurations. This is book configuration. In both entities, I intentionally left configuring field sizes to keep this simple. In the book configuration, book ID is the primary key and title is required. This is really important. This is how we can configure many-to-many relationships in Entity Framework. So in our example, book can have more than one category and one category record can be associated with more than one books as well. When we configure like this, Entity Framework will take care of creating intermediate table for us to resolve the many-to-many relationship. So if you look at this entity diagram, this book category table was created by the Entity Framework migration. Next important part is configuring value objects. You can use owns many method to configure value objects with collections. Or if you have only one object instead of a list, you can use owns one. In my example, because we have collection of SKUs, I'm using owns many. Value objects do not have an identity. It means lifetime of a value object limited to the lifetime of its parent. Here I created unit test project to test CF queries. I configured DB context to use SQL Server pointing to local database. And this line of code logged the SQL statements generated by Entity Framework to test output. And here I got couple of unit tests. In the first unit test, books are searched by the book ID. And in the second, books are searched by the author. At the end of both the test methods, I serialize the return results and write to the test output. As you can see here, when I get book by book ID, I am using first or default. And when I am searching by author, I am using where clause. I'm going to run the test and see the results now. It is running. Okay, let's look at the first query generated by EFCO when we get book by ID. Here you can see the query over here, and it got simple inner query to get the book from the book table, and we have a couple of left joins. One is with review and the other one is with SKU, but there's no any join we can see here with category table. And even if you look at the JSON output, category list is empty. You have reviews and we got some SKUs as well. Now, if you look at the second query that we get the books by the author, you can see a simple statement with book table and there are a couple of joins. with review and SKU. Again, there's no any join with the category table. And see here again categories are empty and reviews and SKUs got some records. In both the cases, it automatically populated the SKU collection and the review collection, but not the categories. It is a little bit strange, isn't it? Let's see the entity configurations again. If you remember, SKUs and reviews are owns properties of the book, but categories are not. Entity framework by default fetch the related data for owns properties, but not for other navigation properties. If I want categories to be populated, every time when I query the book, I can use auto include method. This is a global configuration. Now let's run the test again and see the results. They are running. Yes. Now you can see the SQL generated by EFCO when we get by book ID. Now here you can see another extra left join. See, with an inner query. If you closely look at this inner query, you can see a join between book category and the category table. And you can see the categories in the JSON results as well. Now let's go to the second query that we get books by author. Now here also you can see another left join with an inner query. And here you can see categories in the books. See, yep, yeah, this is the second book, and this is the third. Here you can see two categories with the third book. Now, if you again look at these categories over here, can you see there are books inside categories again? These are nested objects. This kind of behavior will introduce performance issues because we are loading a lot of data. That is why we have to be careful if we are enabling auto include globally, especially in an existing code base. So then if you want to get populated normal navigation properties on demand without using without configuring it globally, what you can do is you can use include method explicitly over here. Here x dot categories. Now I configured it only in get book by ID because when I get books by author, I don't want to get the categories. Now let me run the test again and see the results. Okay. Now here you can see that same left join we saw before, and we can see the categories of this book as well. Now let's go to the gets book by author query. Here we don't have a join with category anymore, and even categories are not populated. Right. Now, as you saw here, if you want to get normal navigation properties populated, there are two options. Either you can enable it globally using auto include method, or you can use include as you query explicitly like this. Let's jump into the next technique. If you look at the query here again, that I am fetching books by author, it returns reviews along with each and every book. Let's say we have a UI where customer can go and search the books. In that kind of use cases, we have to display only the basic details, otherwise it hinders the performance of the search screen. So in here, how can I stop fetching reviews by default? One option is I can go to the entity configuration and I can pass false to auto include method on the review navigation property. Now I have done that. Let's run the test and see the results. They are running. Now let's see the second query on the search screen. Now you can see the join is only with SKU table, no any join with the review table. So if you look at the result set here, reviews are empty. Now let's look at the first query where we fetch the book by ID, because intention of here is showing the details of the book including reviews. Imagine we may have an existing UI where customer can search the books using search screen, then click on a particular book and see the details along with the reviews. So by disabling auto include globally has broken that page because we are not returning reviews anymore. It means now we have introduced a defect to our existing UI. By disabling auto include globally has broken that page because we are not returning reviews anymore. It means now we have introduced a defect to our existing UI. So that is why again we have to be careful if we are applying any global configurations, especially in an existing code base. So I'm commenting this line of code and I'll use a different technique called projection. It is nothing but returning the required fields in a select statement. Let me show you it with this particular query when I'm getting books by author. So here I'm going to create an anonymous object. I'm returning title, author, and it's better to return book ID as well. Then we can create a link on the UI that then customer can click on that link and navigate to the detail page. And SKUs. Okay, something like this. So let me run the tests again and see the results. They are running. It's completed. And if you look at the first query, still we have the join with the SKU table and reviews and categories. And you can see the reviews in the JSON results as well. over here, and we have all the details, SKUs and categories. And if you look at results over here, uh, see, we have basic details only: title, author, book ID, SKU. And if you look at the query, we have a join only with SKU, and in the select statement it returns only the required fields. See? Okay, now let's get into the next important topic, that is Cartesian explosion. I'll explain this phenomenon using our bookstore. Okay, now this is the book entity. If you look at here, all these collection properties, navigation properties are at the same level. In our initial query, if we return categories, reviews, and SKUs all, database return a cross product. This phenomenon is called Cartesian explosion. This will impact the performance of our application because database returns a lot of data. Okay, let me get back to this query generated by the entity framework when we get book by ID. This is the query. Copy, and I already pasted this here, but anyway, to ensure I'm using the same query, I pasted again here. Right. Let me run this query. Right. It return the results. Now this is the result set returned by the first query. Right. You can see there are 12 records over here, and if I go to here, this book has 2 categories and 3 reviews and 2 SKUs. It means 3 multiplied by 2 multiplied by again 2, 12 rows. Imagine what will happen as customers add more and more reviews. Right? So assume if customer add 100 reviews, this become 3 multiplied by 100, and this become 600. Now you can see as customers add more and more reviews, number of records returned by the initial query grows exponentially. This will impact the performance. So what we can do is, in entity framework, we can use split query to solve that issue. Now let me run the unit test again with split query. All right, now you can see there are multiple queries generated by the entity framework. So in the initial query, it is getting the book by book ID, then it get the reviews. Here it is getting the SKUs, and here it is fetching categories of the book. Right. I think it is clear. And we can configure this behavior globally as well, like this. Dot use splitting query behavior, split query, and let me run the test again. Right. Now assume if I search for a book which is not in my bookstore, what will happen? If I run this, I'm expecting to get a test failure, right? Because book is null. Okay, let me comment this line of code and run this again. Right, it's passing because there's no asset. But look at this query. It created only one query, that is to select from book. Because there's no any record, it is not sending other queries to fetch other details. Alright, I hope you got the idea. Alright, that brings us to the end of the session. Before end the video, let's recap what we learned. ONS properties of an entity are loaded by default, but other navigations are not. Loading ONS properties by default can be globally disabled with auto-include method, passing false, and loading other navigation properties by default can be globally enabled with just auto-include, even without passing any parameter. And you can use include method to load navigation properties explicitly, or and you can use projection to fetch only the specific fields, and split query behavior can be used to avoid cross product or Cartesian explosion problem. I hope you enjoyed the lesson. Thank you so much for watching. See you in another video.